Chapter 11, titled The Bitter Battle of the Bulge. As mentioned earlier, the Germans kicked off the Battle of the Bulge attack directly aimed at the Bullingen sector just a few days after the 9th Infantry was pulled out and inserted into the line west of Aachen, Germany, in the Stolberg-Eschweiler vicinity. The 99th Infantry Division had replaced the 9th Infantry Division and was overwhelmed, suffering heavy losses defending against a much larger German force. It was the 99th Infantry's first action of the war. Bullingen was the first town retaken by German troops in the initial Bulge attack. It became clear before long that the Germans' major goal was to capture Antwerp, a vital seaport city handling much of the munitions and supplies supporting the Allied operations. St. Vith, Belgium, situated along the main route to the coast at Antwerp, had to be held at all costs against the all-out advance of the German armor, infantry, artillery, and air force. Although St. Vith fell into the advancing German panzer units and mechanized infantry on December 21st, they were pushed out soon after by reinforced American Army units from several divisions. This major engagement presented a decisive reversal in Germany's plan to capture Antwerp. German paratroopers on the night of December 16th, 1944, dropped behind the 9th Recon while we were patrolling toward a town west of Aachen called Hoven. We realized by morning that our unit had been cut off from the rest of the American forces. It was our sudden introduction to the Battle of the Bulge. To rejoin our division and the American forces under attack, my unit, 2 squads or 24 men, had to fight our way back, encountering pockets of young paratroopers, some of them fanatic and some who were extremely confused and rather ineffective, having been told shortly before jumping that they were going out for a night training exercise. A snowstorm that night also helped to severely hamper their mission. The 9th reconnaissance missions prior to December 15th involved the usual scouting of German units we came across to learn of their intentions. That day, our M8 armored cars and jeeps were left behind as we patrolled on foot. In drawing closer to Aachen, we took shelter in a cellar of a farmhouse. There we made plans for one of the 2 squads to move closer and check out a burg named Hoven. The place was in flames, apparently struck during a U.S. Air Corps bombing raid. This information was radioed back to our CP, adding the comment that we continued to see no evidence of the German army and that Hoven was ein Ofen. This did not seem normal. An ominous feeling gripped us, suspecting that something big was about to occur. Even though no one really said much, our attitude must have expressed the uneasiness. Before leaving the comfort of the farmhouse cellar for our patrol toward Hoven, we had to wait for darkness, giving us some time to rest and contemplate, as I recall. As I thought about my current predicament, my mind soon was crowded with thoughts of Christmas, only days away. Here I was, about to forego the wonderful comforts of home for the holidays, for the second year now, and the sadness of that realization was hard to ignore. I had to accept that I would be missing out on the joyous family celebrations that I was so longing to be a part of again. The sacrifice was tough for this 19-year-old kid, but America was at war, and I had been dealt a small part of it. I soon returned to thinking about the mission ahead. General Omar Bradley had it right when he said, "In war, there is no second prize for the runner-up." After the extended Hoven patrol, and with our guys regrouped in the cellar, we received word then that the German paratroopers, Fallschirmjäger, had dropped to the west of our vicinity. We now had been cut off from the rest, as I mentioned. The situation became chaotic, but in fighting our way back toward Belgium, we found the German jumpers more confused than we were, and they suffered the greater casualties by far. The Battle of the Bulge begins, subtitle. The date was December 16th, 1944, and the Battle of the Bulge was underway. The German code name would be Wacht Rhein, Watch on the Rhine. When the main goal set on the capture of Antwerp, that was the main goal, 80 miles to the northwest. Our reconnaissance work took on an assortment of other warfare specialties, from a feeble attempt to stop the pursuit of a Panzer tank with a mere 37 millimeter armored car cannon, which I fired, and it was a hit and run like hell tactic, to fending off the surprising and desperate enemy attacks and helping control our seriously baffling traffic conditions. Close behind the Panzer tanks and infantry, in their Belgium spearhead assault that pushed off in freezing rain, later turning to snow, were an elite and unique group of German soldiers, 75 men, pretending to be just another group of American GIs, fell in with the U.S. troops for the purpose of confusion and carnage. Dressed in American Army uniforms, they came complete with captured dog tags from American prisoners, riding in jeeps, U.S. trucks, and 2 Sherman tanks. Their tactical operation was nicknamed Greif, or I should say Greif in German for meaning grief, sorrow, trouble, as in English. Interpretation. Trained and led by SS Lieutenant Colonel Otto Skorzeny, a 6'5" tall, 250 pound Obersturmbannführer, storm troop leader. These bold and cunning men were quickly detected by our alert GIs, including my 9th Infantry recon mates. Suspicions led to casual interrogations with key questions that tripped up the imposters. These spies didn't know U.S. baseball facts as well as we did, nor were they knowledgeable enough not to claim they belonged to the 9th Recon Company. Oh, that set it off, because the U.S. Army reconnaissance units are troops, not companies. But the real clincher was finding their German Army pay books when searching them. Considered spies under the Geneva Conventions, they met their end in front of a U.S. Army firing squad. Otto Skorzeny, was Hitler's choice to conduct the daring raid when Skorzeny's paratroops dropped on the Alps mountain prison to risk Benito Mussolini from the Italians planning his execution. This information came from the book D-Day, Daring Missions of World War II by William B. Brewer. None of the American units that we contacted knew any more than we did about the extent of this German counteroffensive for the first several days. We continued to go in different directions, passing through areas such as Malmedy, where hours earlier the notorious Malmedy massacre occurred, when 170 American soldiers captured by German SS Panzer troops were killed by machine gun fire and pistols in cold blood. 43 GIs escaped by running into the woods or feigning death by lying face down in the snow. Although sickened and appalled, our resolve was strengthened to continue the intensity of our engagement against them. The vicinity of St. Vith came under siege much like Bastogne, with the desperate need to defend against the rolling attack of German tanks and infantry. We were directed to that sector to help other units starting to dig in. The Nazi plan was to capture the port of Antwerp, which would have wiped out the vital Allied supply lines. The German assault became more intense, with their plan to gain this tremendous advantage over the Allies by taking control of the port facilities at Antwerp. Both sides suffered heavy losses in this battle of tanks, infantry, and artillery. Those of us fighting off the fierce determination of the elite German armor and infantry units would not be finding much time for sleep. The exception would be the many American GIs and Allied troops who were killed in the awesome struggle to hold back the oncoming German warriors, a permanent sleep for those gallant men who died at the hands of the Nazi regime. Subtitle, No Reprieve. The Christmas of 1944 came and went with little attention given to the blessed holiday. All fighting personnel were in the state of combat numbness, a term used by James Jones, the author of From Here to Eternity, and also he wrote the book titled World War II. Even the customary hot meal was not on our unit's menu for Christmas Day. Some of our men had not lived to witness the glory of another Christmas. The Battle of the Bulge was winding down, but the German military effort was far from crushed. On New Year's Day, 1945, almost the entire 9th Recon was bivouacked somewhere in Germany when a Messerschmitt fighter plane suddenly swooped in on our position with its machine guns blazing. Although the rounds were striking close, there was no casualties amongst us. The pilot failed to pull up, crashing into the hillside and exploding. Before the ruins could be taped off to warn us Germans to stay, to warn us GIs, to stay clear, some of us went close enough to pick up a few remnants for souvenirs, such as a neoprene gasket and part of an instrument. Somehow, the shocking sight had only a small effect on us at that time. It's still a vivid memory, however. Severe fighting continued for a few more weeks, but conditions in the field began to stabilize. Even though the cold temperature remained, we were now in hopes of receiving the much heralded shoe pack. I believe that was the name, a special cold weather shoe designed to lessen the trench foot problem. We received ours the middle of January, 1945. Better late than never. A practice followed by some of us to wiggle with our toes vigorously inside our boots ever so often. We felt certain it helped to prevent the dreaded trench foot disaster. Casualties were numerous from the malefic effects of trench foot. Many men lost toes and even feet and legs as a final result of this insidious malady. Any comfort or benefit was hard to come by, such as the promised and heartily welcomed hot field shower, which I was able to relish all of 3 times in my 11 months of ETO combat. There was never any guarantee offered for this great treat, just a possibility, provided one was at the right place at the right time. New Year, still no celebrating. Toward the end of January 1945, with the Battle of the Bulge now history, the 9th Recon was back into Germany in the same town, Kalter Herberg, that had been our farthest point of advance eastward back in September of 1944. For 3 days on the edge of town, we took turns in an outpost foxhole large enough for 2 GIs. The 2 of us, we would alternate on outlook during the day with another 2-man squad taking the night shift. We were out possibly a half mile from our main group, living in a house that was being constructed. So we switched during the nightness, avoiding detection by the German troops camped in the woods. On the 3rd day, the Germans began their attack from about 300 yards from my partner and me. The German infantry came out of the heavily wooded area across a large open field and directly toward our outpost, although I don't think they knew we were there. I phoned immediately for mortar fire. The first several rounds landed short and only a few yards from us. The concussion tore off our helmets and they landed in the snow. I directed the mortar men to increase the range, which successfully improved their effectiveness, driving the enemy back into the woods after we fired at them, but leaving a number of their men lying in the snow. My partner and I suffered brain concussions, causing a lingered annoyance in our heads for a week or more. Our helmets remained in the snow unnoticed. I knew if we got out of the hole to recover them, we would be detected. One more day at that outpost could have been our undoing. The Germans most likely could have observed our discarded C and K ration empty containers accumulating around our foxholes. As the snow gradually melted, a ring of trash began to appear, forming a bullseye target for the Germans. We realized our mistake and cleaned up before the scene was spotted in the enemy's field glasses. American forces pushed off a large-scale offensive around January 30th with the aim of crossing the Rohr River and hoping to defeat the Wehrmacht once and for all. Of course, much more was yet to come before final victory.